Hello, everyone. Everyone here present in the room, everyone also connected remotely. I'm very happy to introduce our next speaker. She is my mentor, or as I like to say it, my scientific mother. She has many, many years of experience on her shoulders. I would say something as 40 years, and a wealth of knowledge of sustainability of agri-food systems. Her motto is, I want to pass unnoticed, and I would say that's the only thing that she didn't do quite well on her career. She has done her research career at IRTA, which is the Institute of Agri-Food Research and Technology in Spain. And she has also been a professor for 15 years, more or less. Her areas of expertise are the development of inventories and characterization methods for the categories which are important in agriculture. You know, water use, land use, ecotoxicity, eutrophication. And she's gonna tell us what she's learned from doing food LCAs for 25 years. And hopefully, she will also answer the question, does LCA serve to support making agricultural systems more sustainable? Assumpcio Anton, floor is yours, please, when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Montse, for your kind introduction. And also, I would like to thank you to the organization for your invitation. I am really honored to be here, no matter presential or virtual, we are together. So I am going to try to share a screen. It's okay?
Assumpcio.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, very well.
Okay, perfect. So in relation to the presentation, I need to say that my perspective will be from agricultural practices. So I want to improve primary production stage, and I want to see if LCA can help to a better environmental performance. So I have organized the presentation as an opportunity to share with you first, congratulations. Second, a lot of doubts that I have found when I apply LCA to the food sector. They bring me to several concerns or issues which I think need reflection and debate. And also I have some certainties. I will let you confirm me. And finally, I would like to share a few tips, advices to take into account for further advancement to ensure a best environmental performance. So let's start with congratulations. Let me start choosing as a birthday the launch of the harmonization of environmental life cycle assessment for agriculture from Ashley and colleagues. That was in the 1997. Just to account for these 25 years. Of course, there have been other previous dates. For instance, I think in 1993, I think it was in a CETAC meeting in Copenhagen, that some people start to ask about, can we apply life cycle assessment to agriculture? But I have chosen this date of 1997 because that guidelines that has been prepared, they have been, for most of us, the first set of guidelines we had followed, we have to conduct LCA to be applied in agricultural systems. So Following this parallel with childhood and youthfulness with LCA food development, we could say that we have achieved this maturity of the 25 years, which provide us with a good basic learnings because we have been a really good students, and we are ready to apply these learnings. I would like to remark the good work done during this period. You have some examples in the slide. And also I would like to remark the importance of the increasing involvement of different institutions, UNEP, FAO, the European Commission, and of course, our LCA Foods Conference and the growing attendance to them. So it is supposed we are ready to apply LCA to food systems extensively. We are happy. LCA is a great tool. It offers a comprehensive assessment of the whole production chain, avoiding problem shifting between parts of the chain. It provides a multi-criteria environmental vision, avoiding problem shifting between impact categories, and offers this global perspective. And now start with my doubts. First, I am afraid that the great points before mentioned are also the points that makes LCA so difficult. Reasons for that. We need a lot of information. Environment and agriculture are so complex that it is really difficult to catch and simplify everything. So we need criteria and agreements, something really difficult to catch for human beings, I am afraid. And because agriculture represents a lot of variability in yields, variability in management, and variability in surrounding conditions, how can we ensure we are correctly dealing with it? As I say, I am going to focus on the agricultural or livestock stage. We have seen that agriculture production dominates many of the impacts, and being this stage a major contributor. So we need to improve this. But do we have information good enough just to show how this stage could be improved? Are LCA methods really enough to provide answers? Are LCA methods useful enough to measure good agricultural practices? Could LCA contribute to better environmental decisions on agricultural practices? Let's go in more detail. As agronomists, we are providing several advice to the farmer to do it better. But are we sure this good practice will be reflected in the environmental assessment, or are they really a good practice? I think we could agree in the methodological challenges, emissions estimations, databases, impact characterization stage, and interpretation. Now I would like to comment them. For instance, and in this slide, I am showing some of the examples of common practice that we can advise to the farmer to follow. But in which point of the LCA assessment we will see their benefits. We will see in the soil quality impact if we improve adding different fertilizers with different type of organic matter. Will a temporal distribution of fertilizers mean a eutrophication reduction? Could we see decrease in ammonia emissions depending on how and when we are applying organic fertilizers? Could we catch biodiversity benefits of some practices, advices to improve biodiversity, such as floral buffer strips, nest installations, so on? Let's go to the methodological challenges we have. Of Of course, emissions. To have the default values for emissions based on fertilizer amount applied and yield, it's quite easy. And then we know that the corresponding impacts will be directly related to the fertilizer amount applied and the yield obtained. But this means that the only information I can give to the farmer, it's use less, put less fertilizers or produce more in relation to emissions. Nothing about to use this type or this or another type of fertilizer, apply in this way. And I have given this example for crops, but something similar may be said for livestock. Therefore, it looks that it will be more advisable to apply Tier 2 regional emission factors, or even better, Tier 3 emission factors. However, do we have all the information that more sophisticated models require? And what is more, are the potential models to be used calibrated for whatever circumstances? And then, what type of homogenization do we have? Could we agree we can use different models as far as they have been calibrated by the specific circumstances we are testing or not? A potential solution could be, well, we might use a more specific tier for foreground process and the full tier 1 for background. But let me dedicate some slides to this. As I say, it makes sense to look for a more detailed model if crops or animals are part of foreground process, especially if we focus in the farm gate assessment in order to improve agricultural practice. But then we can go to a more default values if they are in the background. Would you agree with this? But what we have learned from our studies is the importance of the importance of the primary production during all the whole chain. So that's the example for olive production. And if we are going to check secondary data for this background process, could we demand Tier 2 models if we are using Tier 2 or Tier 1? I know that we are going to change completely the results, and because of the importance of these processes, that will be also important for the final product. I have another example. Yes, this is for a burger, where, of course, beef production and in particular the feed are shown as major contributors. So again, background information usually corresponds to databases. So the importance of data sets we are going to use. Should we agree in models Tier 2 also for background to be applied? So let's go to databases. How databases has been created? Well, they can be created ideally using data representing specific sites and a specific time. But because we know the variability that in different locations in the same region, we can have really big difference to the inventory data. So that makes things quite complex. But in many cases, that data sets come from literatura or expert knowledge. And as Peter showed yesterday, literatura or expert knowledge could be quite biased to some countries or to some ways of acting. Don't represent it what we need. Otherwise, databases could come from statistics, which, depending on the level of aggregation, wouldn't represent anything. And not always data are presented in a transparent way, which will allow LCA practitioners to accurately adapt such data to their specific case study. Or they are presented with such multiple options which confuse to non-expert practitioners. Another tricky point, allocation. The topic of allocation is one that has given rise to considerable debate among LCA practitioners. And co-production is a common issue in agriculture, with economic or physical allocation being the most commonly approached in food product studies, though they used to be quite easy or usually are easier to apply. But we know that different approaches can result in markedly different results for a given individual product. Let's check the example for the sheep production. We have meat and wool, but it depends of the wool, it's a waste or a co-product, and depend of the price of the co-product. We could have different results for this case for the lamb meat. I don't know if from this, what can I conclude? It's no matter the absolute value of the lamb sheep, advice to the agricultor that the more profit you make from your activity, the best. A particular issue is in relation to what we consider subproducts or waste, like the example of wool. Also works for the wheat. We have the grain and we have the straw. So it may depend on different circumstances that straw can have some value or not. And again, it depends on what happened with the straw. We will have different values for the grain. So my question is, does the damage to nature change depending on the criteria of allocation? And an important discussion comes with allocation of manure on slurry. Is this a waste or a subproduct, which will be used as fertilizer raw or after different treatments? And then to whom allocate burdens, the farmer or the grower? Again, we see that allocation, you see in the example, criteria could change substantially results. Yes, I know that you can tell me that ISO is quite clear and specific category rules could give specific rules. But I think this is the point in the parallel I have shown in the first slides. We are the young adult of 25 years with a clear theory, but lack of experience. System expansion is one of these perfect theories, expanding the product system to include the additional functions related to the co-products. But do we know exactly what to account for or how to deal with variability? It depends on the year, it depends on the moment, because results could change a lot. Yes, allocation in agriculture systems can be extremely complex, and that choice of allocation methods and assumptions involved in applying these methods can have an important influence on the final results. So need agreement. And now we arrive to the results. Perhaps to me, one of the most difficult parts when I need to explain them to the farmer. I need to explain to the farmer if the results are good or not. And how much worse is 1.4 in relation to 1.1. They can be really hard to explain considering uncertainty associated with the models. Yes, I know we have statistical tools to look for answers, just as the Monte Carlo. But do we have all the real information to run them? information about distribution, standard deviations, and so on, of the different inputs, outputs, data sets? Are we sure to have a representative sample? Also, I like very much the idea of associated uncertainty to data quality ratio. That's quite clear. But perhaps, I think for agriculture, it would need a revision. In the end, we have seen these days with the eco-labeling, we could go to simplify answers to traffic lights or ABC statements. But we have seen agreement on the weighting or aggregation conducted will be very relevant. Another major problem I have is when I try to explain human toxicity impacts, for instance, due to the use of pesticides. Farmers are following the rules, so they don't want to hear about potential human toxicity. They are doing correctly. Finally, a major problem is the use of production as functional unit. That means we are evaluating the resources efficiency of the process. That is not bad, but usually penalize extensive or organic production systems. After this series of doubts, which I think I am in the right place to sharing and having answers, I would like to pass to explain you my main concerns. I would say that the most of my concerns come from the impact models. Let's start with land use and biodiversity. Do we need a land use impact category? It could be thought that biodiversity damage is included at that point under ecosystems quality, because most of the midpoint impact categories, climate change, eutrophication, and so on, affects biodiversity. So to create another one, it looks like that overcounting. However, being aware of the importance of land use in agriculture and this use on biodiversity impacts, we have developed a lot of work just to include this impact category. You know that Chowdhury approves, it's the method recommended by UNEP Life Cycle Initiative, another initiative, to account for biodiversity loss. They provide characterization factors for ecoregions, for different taxas, and for different land use intensities, land uses and management intensities. In fact, this method can be used as a basis for identifying major hotspots, but several limitations remain. In my opinion, we need more research just to include more land use classes. We can differentiate cropland, it's quite extensive. We can differentiate horticulture or food trees, organic farming, and so on. I think data from different agronomic practice, as the ones that I've introduced before, buffer zones, nest, incorporation, crop rotation, need to be included. Perhaps ecoregion is even too much big, and we need a more high resolution maps. And also, I would like to have more field experimentation just to test and validate the models that we are using respond to the reality. Just to show an example of the characterization factors from the method recommended to Chowdhury, I think they can give us good information about where, which ecoregion the production is taking place. But the difference about management are not so clear. Results are more dominated by the quantity of square meters of land occupied than for the type of management. So, as I say, I would like also to incorporate all these several practices that we are recommended, just to test how biodiversity improves. and they are not current. They are not reflected in the current analysis. I know that some initiatives are working with this idea to create some kind of equivalence to subtract occupied land, to subtract meters of the occupied land, or corrected the characterization factors in this sense. Hopefully, we have these results early. Another really problem for me is water. Water is really a very relevant issue for agriculture, and particularly for arid and semi-arid regions, such as Mediterranean area where we are. And in fact, if water was not unlimited input, probably the watering crops in warmer areas means that we are going to achieve better yields than in cooler climates. So here we have a big contradiction. Again, we have a good method recommended by most of those important initiatives. But as you know, this method is based on the basin water stability remaining after having met the human and ecosystems water demands. These authors have provided characterization factors for watersheds and country scales, the latter being recommended for the European Footprint Initiative. But because we have seen the regionalization, it's crucial. Perhaps if I have to give some advice of how to advance, I would like to go to a more detailed scale, more sub-basins, and because there are some of the watersheds, they are really, really very big. With the temporal scales, usually we apply the annual, also is the recommendation of the European initiative. But we have seen that the results can change a lot if we use the monthly characterization factors. So I think we need to give more attention to this point of the temporal scales that we use. Also, I agree that we need a better approach for ecosystems demands. But regarding the human demands, I see more problems because I don't see the local water availability needs to be a handicap. So yes, for the ecosystems, but not so clear for the human demand. So my question goes more on, are there any more or less suitable way to carry water transfer between watersheds? I am going to show you an example. Also, I want to say that from an agricultural point of view, I need to know the difference between if the farmer is using well water or a river water. So development of characterization factors to attended water source, I think it's really important. And again, case studies just to test where the methods could be improved. I think it's really important. So going to the example I want to show you. For instance, we have conducted a case study with 2 beef farms, more or less doing the same input, same yields, and so on. And the one, it's 5 kilometers far from the other one. If we follow the environmental initiative, we will apply the characterization factor of the country, in this case Spain, that is a quite high one. So we will have really an important impact. But because we have information of the water basins, we will apply the characterization factors of these water basins. And we see that for the one farm, we have really a very low characterization factor. And for the other one, we have really a very high value. So the results in water impact for these two farms could change completely. What I am going to explain to the farmer, that's also a point that I would like to discuss with you. Well, the other impact model that I am really worried about is that's related with ecotoxicity, mainly, not only because there are other inputs that also are involved with ecotoxicity, but mainly for pesticides. We have a recommended method that I think it's really good to have recommended methods, but also we need to know that this method is giving us freshwater ecotoxicity, is assessing organic compost very well and works with a continental scale. But for the farmer, it's really important what is happening in the soil, with the life in the soil and the life surrounding the crop. So we need terrestrial toxicity impacts. We need inorganic pesticides. We need to know what happened with metabolites. For instance, some metals, such as the copper one, could be used as a fertilizer or a pesticide, being both a nutrient or a pollutant. And we know that copper is a contentious input, not allowed in some countries, and completely needed for organic production in others. The residence time of viability, which in turn depends on surrounding climatic conditions, are challenging factors to compute, which require further research and urgent research. And once more, I would like to remark the need of experimental data just to calibrate the developed models. Another aspect is the geographical scale of the work. As far as I know, USTOC is developed also for continental scale, taking quite the full geographical values. Not sure if working with a more detailed scales will be more exact the appreciation of this ecotoxicity. Well, in fact, to have these doubts and concerns have bring me with some certainty. Some of them. We need urgently local databases with a really good representativity of locations and managements. Variability exists and we need to communicate correctly. I come later to this point. As I have shown in the dots, we need to agree urgently on the specific tier models to be used. Also, I know that a lot of statistical useful information is collected by countries, but country is not always, or it is very few times, a good representative area for environment. So more work in other areas, in other geographical scales. As far as we are using yields as functional units, we see resource focus and resource efficiency. Think about it. And I am sure that my list of entities will be extended by Frida. I am seeing very interesting presentations these days. Let me give some illustration about the points that I have mentioned previously. Regarding data sets, I guess this is a point that we could agree quickly. Results can change a lot depending on the data sets we use. Here in this example, well, there is an example, just sure you know a lot of examples. Just mentioned that in this example, the impacts improve, but it would be otherwise. So in this case, also better to know and try to improve. Following with reference values. Let's put the example of a class with a bimodal distribution, 3 outstanding students and 3 underperforming ones. The average doesn't retain this information. If a farmer is doing Cs, could we choose as practice good because it's just over the average? But we have the half of the population are doing better than him. Yes, you can tell me that we have really good works that we have doing a correct statistic assessment, but what we have in the end is a final figure. Check webs, news, benchmark values. Again, good theory, but what happened with practice? So following with examples of the sensitivities, I would like, well, I'm sure that the audience have a lot of them. So I would like to summarize just giving this example. The most important thing is to know exactly what we want to measure and then to use the appropriate tool. It doesn't make sense if you want to measure 5 milliliters to use a beaker or even a graduated cylinder. Yeah, we need a pipette. We need to be sure to use the correct tool to catch inherent variability, including different management practices in detail, soil types, climate, seasonality, life cycle of perennial crops, and so on. For sure, the main function of agriculture is food production, but we need in some way to catch all other functions to preserve landscapes, to take care of the soil and nature in general, fix people in the territory. Perhaps the solution is linking environmental with social assessment, but always. And of course, advancement on those impact categories mainly related with agricultural activity, soil quality, water, biodiversity, ecotoxicity, and eutrophication. Before finishing, I would like to remark some points that often, I think, it causes confusion. First, it's in relation to circular economy, which should be a very good initiative. But please, the most important is not create the waste. If there is not other solution, welcome recycle and others, but first prevention. From an environmental point of view, we cannot justify activities just because they manage waste appropriately. And I know that circular economy is more than this, but just for this. Another aspect that I am worried about is about the compensation policies, and among them, those in relation with carbon compensation. First, please avoid pollution and do not forget that function of agriculture is providing food, not to compensate pollution. Having said that, if agriculture can contribute to solve problems, great, but this does not justify we cannot do things properly. Also, in relation with this idea of compensation, we have this claim of zero emissions. In my opinion, it is more or less saying we are reducing emissions because we are doing correctly. In fact, zero emissions will be doing nothing, and we are not advancing on this way. Another aspect that is creating a lot of confusion is this average reference, as I have shown. Please be careful when comparing. And a last point I want to advise, I guess most of you know very well, but it's something that I find very often with public in general or even policies. I refer to the confusion between short food supply chains and geographical proximity. Short food supply chains refer to a limited number of economic operators between producer and consumer. This is a good socioeconomic thing, probably, but it doesn't necessarily imply geographical proximity, nor better environmental performance. So, coming back to the question of the title of the presentation, does LCA serve for the improvement of the agricultural sustainability? Currently, my answer will be partially, but it shall serve. We know the way to it. We will need a pipette, and now we have a beaker, but we are on the way to achieve it. We just need real data and case studies. So, at this point, I would like to thank you for your attention, again to the organization of the conference to invite me. And also, I would like to take this opportunity to inform you that by the end of the year, I will be retiring. So let me thank all organizations I have been working for during these more than 40 years of work. The Agricultural Department of the Government of Catalonia, the Agricultural Research Food Institute, the Rovira Virgili University, and the Agricultural School of the Polytechnic University. And a special thanks I want to give to those projects that I have been involved, which has allowed me to know people, learn, and contribute, I hope, to a better LCA methods, and particularly a better environmental agriculture. And now, please, questions, answers, and comments. They are very welcome.
Thanks a lot, Assumpcio, but you cannot retire right now with all the things that you still have to do.
That's work for you.
No, please. Is there, first of all, some question coming online? Please feel free to raise your hand or write that in the chat. If not, we will start with questions here in the room, and then I will go back again to the chat. Okay.
Thank you, Assumpcio, for your keynote speak. Very interesting. It's like reading, like listening to an update of RIP et al. 2008, you know, the list of issues with LCA. I have a specific question for you. It's regarding the impact categories which are kind of incomplete or under work, such as water impacts, impacts on biodiversity, terrestrial ecotoxicity, etc. In your opinion, what would be the factors that would allow us to reach a similar level of consensus as we have, for instance, for climate change and for other impact categories that we don't discuss as much as those incomplete ones? Thank you.
Thank you, Anton. In my opinion, what we need is information, because I say we have a lot of variability. If we don't catch all this variability, we can have impact models biased. So I think if we can develop case studies testing biodiversity, testing models, case studies testing all the water impacts and so on, we will have information and happen. Because when we see this difference in a farm 5 kilometers far from another one, I say something is not working. then we can discuss, can we do a kind of ponderation or weighting or what? But first, we need to have this information just to be sure if we are concluding correct conclusions or appropriate conclusions that make sense. So case studies, please.
First to go to a question which is in the chat, and then we will go back again to the room. Kirsi Uzba Asun is asking, well, thank you for your very good reminder of the very basic aspects in LCA, well, primary data and being close to agricultural processes. Do you, Kirsi, have any question? It was more like a comment. Well, then, go back again. Thanks, Kirsi, for the comment.
You're welcome.
Let's go back again to the room.
Hello. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm from New Zealand. And my question to you was about benchmarking. So if we had an LCA of done of 40 orchards in a particular sector, you mentioned that the average, it's not helpful to just look at averages because there may be orchards that are performing better or worse than the averages. So if we were to have some kind of a benchmark for that sector, how would we go about it if we don't use averages?
Yeah, I would say be sure that the average corresponds at the technology or at the way of producing that we want to compare, not to create average of everything. Does it respond?
Are you? Okay. Many thanks, Assumpción, for your contribution to the LCA community, and congrats for those many, many years. I'm Anna Slin from Sayari in France. I have just one question. You haven't talked about planetary boundaries. What are your views on that? How do you think we are ready to incorporate them in our assessments, and how? And if not, what are your views, basically? Many thanks.
Yeah, I have not been working with planetary boundaries. I think they are interesting, but I am not the correct person to indicate how to incorporate in LCA.
Hi, Assumpcio. Nice to see you online. And first thing I want to say is you're far too young to retire, and you've got far too much experience to retire. So, and then the second thing was to pick up on the issue of data and needing to collect more data, and that was the theme that came through very strongly yesterday in the keynote presentations as well. So the solution is always we need to collect more data, but obviously that takes time, and also that's never going to happen in some parts of the world. So what are the other things we could look at doing in the interim that will make it much more obvious that our inability to collect some data from some areas and so on is effectively biasing LCA studies?
I would say that data is priority. So I don't want to look for other things, because I know that, and I think we know this the first day that we knew that data, but because data is difficult, we are prioritizing other things. So forget other things. Go to the data. When we have the data, then go the models. So, I mean, if I have the money to prioritize research, I will go databases in other countries.
There is a question coming from the chat. Lorenzo Giacomella asks, who do you think should be in charge of collecting the data we need? Farmers themselves, companies, governments, researchers, active contribution from consumers?
The ideal would be a consortium of everything or everybody. But in my opinion, governments would be the first to ask for the, I think it is the work. Researchers can help doing how to do it better, farmers giving the information, everybody, but I think it's something that we need to claim to our governments.
We have time for one quick question more. And it's coming here online, one question. Antonin Pepin asks, to be somehow provocative, don't you think LCA is a tool to marginally improve the impact of dominant farming? Efficiency, substitution, instead of doing what is really important, to shift towards really sustainable farming?
If it is, we need to change, and we can.
Ian told me that we still have time for the last question. Yvonne Acosta Alba asks, which is your opinion about how to enhance and fund regional research and case studies in those countries, in developing countries, she means?
Yeah, that's, I guess when I say governments, I was thinking in the government of the country, but in this case, I see clearly that perhaps other countries, developed countries, have other priorities. But in this case, I think that these big institutions like FAO or UNEP or whatever could do this part of encouraging this type of countries. And in fact, they are doing that with more passion, I would say.
Well, before at the presentation, I said that Assumpcio's motto is, I want to get a notice. She also has a second motto, which is, I have lots of doubts. And I think it was quite clear this morning. Yanni, you want to close the session?
Thank you very much, Assumpcio. Thank you very much, Monse. So, well, Assumpcio, we would like to thank you in name of the LCA Foods community for an impressive career, for your devotion, your passion during all this time. And, well, we know that you have a lot of plans. Please do all of them. Enjoy your retirement. But please do not forget about us, and occasionally we will have doubts, and we will come back to you to see if you can help us with all the wisdom you have accumulated in these years. So, well, I think Assumpcio, after 25 years of LCA community, obviously she's got a longer career, but after 25 minutes involved with our community, she deserves one final round of applause. And yeah. And well, although she won't be present in the daily discussions we have in different groups, research groups, etc., projects, it is also true that she's left behind a lot of people. Monse is one of them that are well trained, and they contribute constantly to improve our methods, to improve the LCAs we do, and obviously improve the importance that our methods have in daily decisions and in policy support, etc. So, well, after this emotive moment, I think we can go to the coffee break. I know some of you were quite hungry this morning, so you've already had a shorter coffee break earlier. But yeah, now we've got the official coffee break, and we are starting back with the parallel sessions at 11:45. So we're going to keep that 15-minute delay that we accumulated earlier today. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Monse. Thank you, Assumpcio.